What's the Church of Scientology so afraid of?
This is SPTV.
Hello, everyone. What is that noise? Is someone's calling me?
No way.
Could you guys hear that?
No.
Sorry, I put my stuff on Do Not Disturb. Welcome, everyone, for some more SPTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult.
And a good day to not be David Miscavige.
A great day not to be David Miscavige. Welcome, Jeff. Welcome, Andrea. Right? I got it right?
You got it. Yeah, perfect. Nothing like a big pressure, huh?
Before I said, is it Andrea or Andrea? Now, the thing is, Andrea is how I always want to say it. But, you know, sometimes I have to be like, whatever you think you're about to say, always say the opposite. Well, welcome, guys. For the viewers who didn't see my last chat with Jeff, let me just show everyone Jeff's channel, PTS for Life. And Jeff is the uncle of one of my favorite Sea Org members, Huck Taylor, Huckleberry Taylor. I hope Huck knows how much I appreciated everything he did when he was in the Sea Org and being treated like absolute garbage. So the chat, you know, Jeff, when you and I spoke last time, I had never met your wife before, but it came up that your wife was never in Scientology. In fact, when you got into Scientology, do I remember it correct? You guys were already dating for a little bit when you got into, no, you were born into Scientology. How did it, let's just jump right into it. How did you guys meet? Andrea, how did you end up marrying a former Scientologist?
So do you want to do just your brief backstory?
Yeah. So I was born a second generation Scientologist. I was raised in a Scientology school, spent a bunch of time on Class 5 org staff, joined the Sea Org twice, never completed the EPF either time because I wasn't tough enough to make it in the Sea Org. And for the past, about 10 or 11 years, I've been recovering from being in Scientology. And around, 8 years, maybe 8 years out is when I finally exposed that I was part of the cult of Scientology originally. Actually, no, probably about 5 or 6 years out.
Yeah. And so I grew up obviously not in Scientology or in any cult-like group, although I was raised Catholic, and we might touch on that at some point. I had a very abnormally normal upbringing, and in 2010, actually almost to the day next week, Jeff and I went on our first date
to a hockey game.
So very Canadian, but we met mountain biking. Just kind of a random encounter in a mountain biking group. We dated for 6 years, I think, before Jeff let me know that he'd been in Scientology, and we'd actually broken up for a period of about 6 months or so, and that was the point where he joined the Sea Org for the second time. So we were together for about a year and a half, and then we broke up. I didn't know why he left, other than he was getting a job in publishing.
It's true.
And then we ended up getting back together. We were together for a few more years. And then in a really rough time for him, I learned about his background.
So even when he broke up with you because of Scientology, he still had not told you he'd ever had anything to do with Scientology?
No.
Would you have even known what Scientology was at that point?
No, even when he told me kind of 3 or 4 years later, my references for Scientology were that Tom Cruise had jumped on a couch. And I hadn't seen the video ever. I just knew that it had happened, and a South Park episode.
Right.
So I knew from the state that he was in when he told me that it was big, but I didn't have a reference point for it. And I'm still learning how big it actually is and was.
You mean big for him?
Yes. Yeah. How impactful growing up in Scientology is to those of you who did it.
Yes.
I mean, to be fair, I am still learning too. You know, like as I go through this process on my YouTube channel and bringing back memories that have been kind of repressed, I have actually come up with more and remembered more and feelings and emotions. So it's a journey.
You know, Andrew, you don't sound Canadian.
Oh, I am.
Say
you
about.
are?
Say about.
Yes. If I go out and about, do I sound any more Canadian?
No, I'm expecting oot and a boot. But you see, Jeff sounds Canadian. That's interesting. Okay, so you didn't grow up in America. Or
Well,
anything.
so
mean, US.
I was born on the East Coast. Well, not East Coast, but Eastern Canada.
Yeah.
And you were born on Western Canada. Maybe that's what it is.
We actually swapped. I spent a bit more time in Ontario in the middle of Canada.
True.
During elementary school for about 5 years, but actually they sound more Canadian than we do on the West Coast. So who knows?
Right.
I have
There's
a
no
very
explaining it. There's
flexible
no explaining.
accent. If I'm talking to someone, my friends in Ireland, I'll kind of morph over to them. So maybe I've got your accent today, Aaron.
There you go. There you go. Okay, so Jeff, it's funny because you know, you and I both had Scientology upbringings, and whereas I was never someone who would go around trying to get people into Scientology, I don't recall being like actively embarrassed about it or actively. No, that's not true. There was one girl I definitely never told, even when she casually mentioned that she thought the Antichrist would come from Scientology. All my friends who were there at that moment who knew I was a Scientologist were like stifling their laughter, and I was like, "Don't say anything. Don't say anything. Don't say anything." Okay, so aside from that, though, I don't recall like actively withholding the subject of Scientology. What was going on in your mind? What was the reason that you went years without mentioning it?
Well, and it wasn't even just not mentioning it to her, but I also didn't mention it to anybody. There was definitely a stigma of embarrassment, a little bit of shame attached to it as well. I guess just knowing that I had been kind of duped into believing that this stuff was true. I think it was just I didn't want anyone to know, and it's purely an ego thing, I guess. I felt embarrassed for falling for something that was so clearly not true, because at this point I had seen like South Park and all the basic movies and documentaries that were out at the time, explaining what kind of a scam it was.
So Jeff, when you first saw the South Park thing, you, like I, did not do the OT levels in Scientology. Did you watch that and did you think, oh, these guys have it totally wrong? They're like grossly misunderstanding something, or did you somehow already knew that they were being completely truthful?
Oh, I definitely knew. So when I was around 16 and 17, I was deep into the internet back then, doing web programming and so forth. And I was on the alt Scientology religion forums. And so I was already exposed to all this well before that episode. I just I didn't understand it, right? Like the OT levels are so stupid that they don't make any sense at all. So you're thinking, oh, that can't be true.
Right.
But when the South Park, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's real.
You know, it's funny. Whenever I had in the prior to like learning that was really the OT levels, prior when I would stumble upon it, I was like, oh, these people, because the word body thetan in Scientology doesn't exist unless you learn it on OT3. And I was like, these people they have a misunderstanding. It's that the thetans run the bodies. It's not, I'm like, these guys just don't understand. And it's funny, like it didn't occur to me, maybe they know something I don't know. It's funny because for me, when I found out about the OT levels, it's not like what's on them is just batshit crazy compared to what Scientologists already believe. True. It's just not at all what you're led to believe is going to be on them. You think it's going to be something magical and mystical and so incredible it would be hard to describe. And you're like, thetans stuck to bodies telepathically? Are you shitting me? Like it was a disappointment. It wasn't that it was like, oh, that's crazy. It was like, oh, that's such a disappointment. That's how I responded to that info. How did you respond to first stumbling upon that info?
Well, just my only real experience with the OT levels, like first off to say, I've never been interested in auditing. I've just never liked it. I've always liked the training aspect of things for some reason. So I never really considered auditing much, but I was always told that all the things that are going on that haven't cleared up by going clear are handled on the OT levels. So I just assumed that it was like some magical stuff that handles deeper engrams or something, right? And I never really contemplated what could actually be behind solo auditing, where you have one can. Like I'd look at it thinking, why? it's like, okay, you have to use the other hand for the meter, but then how do you write? And, so it's just kind of like this. It was always so confusing to me. And then I worked for an OT7 in his house, and he would always tootle off to his little room next door to the office, home office there, and be gone for like 15 minutes. And like, I'd hear his safe opening where he'd keep his confidential materials, and then he wouldn't say anything because I could hear, right? So I could hear the closet opening. I could hear the safe going, opening, closing, him shuffling around in his chair, but he'd never say anything. So it's just kind of like, I don't know, maybe just talk softly because I'm here. So anyway, yeah. So I just, I didn't really consider it very much. And then when I found out about body things, like, okay, well that makes sense. He doesn't need to talk, so.
Yeah. So Andrea, if your only real exposure to Scientology was the idea that Tom Cruise had jumped on the couch in the South Park episode, had you watched that whole South Park episode, or had you just heard about it?
I had watched it, but again, from an outside view, it would have resonated as like, this is out there, but not as impactful as if I knew that this was really truly what was believed.
Right. Had you ever met a Scientologist before, to your knowledge?
Not that I'm aware of, but who knows?
You were dating one for so long.
Maybe my Scientology radar is just like really broken.
That's right. That's funny. I always run into science. Of course, I live in Clearwater, so to me, it's actually very obvious when I run into a Scientologist. But if I was in some random city where, I mean, the big cities in Canada aren't exactly random cities, but if I was in somewhere where there wasn't a big org, I wonder if I would be able. Like, I wonder if I notice them here because I expect to notice them here.
Yeah. Well, they run across the street when they see you, right?
Exactly.
It's hard to not see that.
I know. Most of them these days don't even know who I am. But okay, so what is it that prompted you to finally mention it after so much time of not wanting to?
I think you'd be better at answering that because you were more in tune with how I was feeling and stuff at the time.
Well, I think you've, for longer than you've been with me, been up and down mental health wise.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the really big lows, and you needed help. And the only way to really break down that wall for how much help you needed, I think, was to tell me. But I really think it's because you were kind of at rock bottom. Yeah,
I had definitely hit a deep point in depression, and I think a big part of it was that I was not confronting, to use Scientology lingo, my past and like the reality of it and the abuse and the, and it's still something I deal with today. But I think that was kind of it, that I needed to talk to somebody. And I had such a hang up on discussing it with a psychotherapist of any kind, with, being grown up with the teachings of anti-psychiatry of L. Ron Hubbard, and my dad being an executive director of CCHR, which is the front group that rallies against psychiatry. There was no real option for me to actually go talk to someone like that. And, Andrea, the love of my life, is always there to listen, completely not judgmental, and was always there for me. So
was it you having to kind of spit out why you were so resistant to seeing someone? Is that kind of what?
I think it was, no, we weren't in a discussion about therapy. It was just, I am shattered. You were at a low, and I think it just came out of your mouth. I grew up in Scientology.
Which means nothing to her at the time.
And at that point, this must mean more than just those words sound to me, because the person I care about is really hurting.
Wow.
So this is big. This is huge, but I don't understand it.
So, wow. and kind of on that point, I received an email recently from another ex-Scientologist who has a huge history he told me about, and he's actually moved cities to get away from the environment that he was abused in. Like, he didn't have to leave. He didn't have family he was leaving with. He just had to get away from that and go somewhere where it didn't exist. So the stigma attached to it is definitely real. and that trauma needs to be confronted, and that's how I confronted it. Right. So deep.
Wow. Okay, so it's incredible just to consider that he's telling you something that for him is like a profound revelation, and you're like, astrology? No, I'm just
Yeah. Wait, aliens?
I like the stars. Okay, so how did you go about trying to understand what exactly all that meant?
I'm very like logic based. So and I'm also a big library supporter. So I went on the public library website to see what books there were on Scientology.
Wow.
And so my knowledge of Scientology books at that point was shaped by what our local public library had in stock. So I had grabbed Jenna Miscavige's Hill's book and Leah Remini's book. And so those were my first print introductions to what Scientology was.
Wow.
And then at that point, because it was out in the open, we could watch things together.
I had been watching
Scientology.
things secretly. Like if she would be going to work and I was home, I'd watch YouTube videos secretly because I wanted to keep it to myself. But then once she knew, it didn't matter, and then she could actually see the depths of how much I was watching.
Wow. So was it more important to you to read material from people who had left and so were in a similar mindset as Jeff, as opposed to like, ooh, what do the Scientology books themselves actually say?
It's funny, it never occurred to me to go get an LRH book out of the library and read it. I had already discounted Scientology because of what it had done to Jeff.
Wow.
Well, and so I've just recently come into a bunch of Scientology materials I'm doing videos with, and you reading it for the first time is pretty funny because it makes no sense at all. And she's a linguistic expert by background through school and everything, and so she's reading it, and the grammar and everything, the way it's laid out, it makes zero sense, right? So it's pretty funny to watch.
Wow.
And I think what's fascinating, probably for people who are well steeped in SPTV and the people who are in Scientology, is we've talked about doing a survey at, say, our local coffee shop and just asking people, how much do you know about Scientology? I think it's easy within this little bubble to have a picture that the world at large knows a lot about Scientology. And it's increasing lately because of mainstream media coverage. But your average person, I don't think, knows that much. And then on the flip side, for those of us who like dive in and start to learn all this stuff, it's hard to remember that your average Scientologist doesn't know all this stuff.
Yeah, it's true.
That because this is a pay-to-play religion and things are behind paywalls, essentially, it's not like opening the Bible and being able to see the whole belief system laid out in front of you.
Yes, absolutely.
You've got a paywall in your
absolutely. Religion. And it's funny because it seems like what the non-Scientologist world at large thinks the most is what's the word right to put this into words? The whole thing about Xenu and the body Thetans seems to be what non-Scientologists, people who've never been associated with Scientology, seem to think that is like what Scientology is. And the irony is that that's the only part of Scientology that most Scientologists don't know about.
Yeah. And therefore, it's not the effective way to talk to a Scientologist to try to have them start to re-examine their beliefs.
That's right.
If you run in and say, I know about Xenu, wait, what?
Yeah, it's true. I think most Scientologists would have the same reaction that I did back in the day, which is body Thetans. These idiots have it all reversed. They don't even understand. Like they're all worked up about nothing, So Jeff, how has it, I don't know what you would compare it to, right? But how has has it helped having a perspective of someone who can analyze all this? Well, I feel like I'm repeating myself. Someone who can analyze everything you've been through from the perspective of someone who hasn't been through it. Like, I know in some ways it helps having someone who knows exactly what you went through. Like in some ways, having someone to talk to about that is what most people leaving Scientology lack. They're like, I have a very supportive partner, but they have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. And it's frustrating. And so I understand the need to have someone who doesn't need to have everything translated for them. But has it been helpful to have someone to bounce things off of who has a completely outside perspective?
Yeah, for sure. I think the important thing about having someone who doesn't know what the heck you're talking about is you can actually sit down and try to explain it to them. And then by doing that, you can realize how ridiculous it sounds. And then if you don't realize it first, then they can counteract and kind of ask you questions like, okay, great. So let's take the PTS. All illnesses to greater or lesser extent are directly caused only from a suppressive person, right? Being involved in your life. And you can then say to that person, well, has there ever been a time where that hasn't been true? You know, it's kind of like the learning drill in Scientology where you give a datum and then you say, well, give me an example of how that is true or isn't true. And you can just go back and forth. And I think that's been the most helpful part of having Andrea in my life and my recovery is just her complete ignorance of the subject so that she can then ask me those questions and try to explain it to her.
I guess maybe one example is, and knowing your background has helped me understand a little bit more. Some of the things you've done and said make more sense. So the thought that you should be able to do anything and do it right the first time because you've done it before at some point on your timeline. So as much as I see lots in the chat comparing you to James Hetfield from Metallica, like there's no reason why you should be able to pick up a guitar and play it well the first time. This is a learning process and you need time and lessons and investment. But you tend to attack things like, I try it, I should be good at it. If I'm not, it's because of me and therefore I should give it up.
Yeah, it's I actually, and speaking of guitar, I remember when I was younger, I always wanted to learn to play guitar and be good at it, but I was just terrible at it. I'm tone deaf and, you know, my fingers would cramp up. And one of the reasons that LRH says you can't learn how to do something is your inability to confront. So one of the things you do is literally sit there and confront the thing that you're trying to learn. So I would sit there for hours with my guitar and just confront it.
Now that's a dedicated Scientologist
know,
right there. Oh my
but you
goodness.
know what? I still suck at guitar.
Oh my goodness. And no one made you do that? That was your idea?
Well, yeah, because it's LRH. It's like
no, but I mean your initiative. To do that.
No, I was just trying to figure out why I sucked at guitar, and there was a datum, so I decided to try it.
Wow. Andrea, it gets so crazy. Jeff might have already told you this, but on the student hack course, which is the major course where you learn all of the study technology, David Miscavige actually put this on the course in 1996. It wasn't on there prior to that. The idea is that one of the reasons people have trouble understanding the references is they're just not able to confront the page itself. So you take the reference and you hang it upside down and you pin it on the wall, and you're supposed to just look at it for 2 hours without flinching or moving or falling asleep or anything. Just an upside down paper. And that is supposed to help you study L. Ron Hubbard and understand him better.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. But to hear that you applied that to a guitar, man, that's next level.
I was dedicated.
Andrea, as he's tried to explain some of the Scientology concepts to you, or some of the ways those concepts were applied to like him as a young person growing up in Scientology, what's something that just as a complete outsider strikes you as like, wow, that is a excellent way to screw somebody up, or to, you know, that is particularly destructive, mentally, psychologically, psychically. Does anything stand out?
The two kind of oddest things. One is application of assists in your schoolyard. So like trying to imagine a whole schoolyard full of kids being silent so as not to create engrams for the person who has hurt themselves while playing is a bizarre concept to me. And then the one that I think gets talked about a lot is the ashtray. So the training routine where you have to tell the ashtray to stand up and make it lift up and tell it to sit down. And at first I go, oh, that's really like silly. How could you do that? And then recent conversations have really brought to light that it's all based on emotional masking and suppression and exactly how harmful that is. So I've had a lot of fun laughing at the ashtray TR, but it's only really hit me lately how destructive that whole TR drill process is in terms of masking your own emotions, keeping it down, projecting positively all the time, and just really not being you. That's the brainwashing aspect to an extreme.
Yeah. So the ashtray drill is TR8, and I'm not embarrassed to admit that was one of my favorite drills. How much did you do that on pro TRs, Jeff, or upper indocs, or TRs and objectives, or what?
I was never lucky enough to do the upper indocs.
Oh,
but I definitely witnessed it a lot. There's also another drill afterwards where you control a body, so you have to basically move someone around the room, manhandle them essentially, and it would get pretty crazy in Vancouver. One guy actually got sent through a wall.
TR7 is the manhandling.
Yeah,
is the manhandling one. Yeah. It's funny, that idea of suppressing emotion and that Scientology teaches you to turn off emotion. That's something that for a long time people would say to me. Well, when I was out of Scientology, but even after I was sort of, in 2009, I kind of started my path out of Scientology. I wasn't like officially declared until 2014. But that idea that Scientology teaches you to suppress emotion, even when I already didn't believe in Scientology, I still got very defensive about that idea. And I was like, that's not true. What are you talking about? That's such a stupid idea. Like, it was one of those blind spots that I had where it was just weird. I would get so defensive about it. And it took me a while to have enough clarity to look back on all the things we were taught and go, oh yeah, emotion was always a bad thing, except anger. For some reason, it's okay to be angry.
Yeah.
But no, which is also weird, right? Because technically speaking, that shouldn't be true. And yet in the practical, the lived experience of Scientology, it is true. I don't know. Did you always feel, Jeff, that you're being taught to suppress emotion, or is that something you sort of had to come to realize?
It's definitely something I had to come to realize. And yeah, I know exactly where it started when I was 14 and I was feeling like hurting myself. And I was told by the DSA that if I did anything that would hurt myself, unalive myself, then I would just come back worse than I was in another life. But she never actually gave me something to do to fix it. And so all I could do was internalize. And I spent my entire life internalizing that. If I was ever upset on post, I would get told to stop having case on post. And so it's just like repetitive. Even when I was a kid being raised, my mom would tell me no HE&R. Or stop dramatizing.
I need a definition.
Sorry. HE&R, human emotion and reaction. Essentially, it's any kind of emotion that is negative or would come from the reactive mind or just be reacted to something. And then being dramatizing is for kids. They back then anyway, they would use it for their kids if you started crying or just acting out in any kind of way. They say stop dramatizing, essentially dramatizing an engram. So. I was told that. And so my entire life growing up, if I ever emoted in a way that's below like enthusiasm, I would just get in shit. So,
yeah, it's funny because, when we talk about it not being very, very obvious to us that we're being taught to suppress emotion, and then you say something that it seems like it would be so obvious. Like there was a freaking term for showing negative emotion, human emotion and reaction, and calling this emotion human emotion was a derogatory phrase because Scientologists are more than human. They're homo novus. They're not homo sapien. And so, but it didn't even occur to me that like you're being told that normal human reactions are bad, that we have transcended normal human emotion. I still don't, I haven't sat down and thought about this deeply. I still don't know what to make about the fact that anger is okay.
It's a tool you can use to make things go right.
True.
But if you think about it though, Aaron, it is not actually acceptable. I just think that people fail at being quote unquote tone 40. And so the only way to get what they want done, much like in all kinds of areas of life, is to get angry. And it gets confused for tone 40, because then what happens is the people get scared because you have some sort of altitude over that person, and then they just bow to your will. But I don't actually believe that it's acceptable to be angry in Scientology, just to fall back to it.
Well, it's true. It's one of these cognitive dissonance points, because technically L. Ron Hubbard said that anything below 2.0 antagonism on the tone scale is reactive mind, derived from the reactive mind. Anger is 1.5. So anger should be reactive band level of emotion. And yet L. Ron Hubbard wrote, it was a flag order for Sea Org members. And I forget the name of it, but it was about like a captain on a ship, and the ship's heading towards the rocks. And, the crew members are all sort of stuck in their reactive minds, to the point where they're not operating in present time. And the only thing that can bring them into present time is the captain basically screaming at them and impinging on them and snapping their attention into present time. And then the whole flag order sort of wrapped up by saying, ships stay off rocks or shoals because captains yell, or something like that. And so this is like the caveat, the asterisk, why it's okay to, I think now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm thinking I'm making it make sense. You can scream as long, the reactivity would be if you felt angry, but it's okay to scream and sound angry as long as you're at cause and it's not because you're at the effect of an engram. Yeah, you can explain away everything, basically.
So, and I think that you might have a misunderstood word, Aaron.
What?
Yeah,
my pearls. What?
So I know. So is that, I think that reference might actually be on the product Zero or the
yes.
ETF.
Yes.
I think I've read that. And I think the misunderstood word that you have there is that yelling is necessarily angry. It doesn't have to be. And in fact, if you talk about screaming at an ashtray, you don't scream at it in anger. You scream at it in tone 40, which is the highest you can get. But that doesn't
no, that's actually not correct. So that TR8 drill has a few different steps, and the screaming step is actually supposed to the result, the product of that step. You're supposed to have a realization that, oh, the screaming isn't the intention. So screaming at it isn't the intention. And then you go on to the final step, which you're not screaming. So the screaming step is not supposed to teach you that screaming is tone 40. It's actually supposed to teach you that screaming is not tone 40. And but I'm sorry, but I just wanted to make, anyway, go ahead.
Sorry. I guess the point being that you can use tone 40 in any part of the tone scale.
Yeah.
And the purpose of the tone scale, according to L. Ron Hubbard, is also to bring someone from the tone that they're in up another one. So if the person, let's say, is in 1.1 or something below antagonism, if you use anger, that will help bump them up higher in the tone scale, sort of thing.
True.
Right? So it's all very stupid, but
can I say I love that you two are debating Scientology theology that you do not practice anymore.
It's true. It's true. But he did say he never did the upper end docs, so I know there's room for him not to understand what those steps were. That's all.
Totally.
Okay. Let me see. There was something else. Okay. So has he tried to explain to you the process of auditing?
Yes.
How did that strike you? What did you make of all that?
Well, there's the intensity of it, and the going at it and going at it and going at it until the needle floats, that is out there for me in terms of harassment. Let's call it harassment. The actual thought behind it of talking about things that were bad and feeling better after that. As someone raised Catholic, that's not that far off. So as a Catholic, I was meant to go into a small room behind a screen, tell somebody all the things that I did wrong. And that starts at the age of 7. To be then asked for forgiveness and be told what my penance was to atone for it, and then feel better at the end. And as a child, you actually did feel better, but you sometimes had to come up with some things to say. I think the key difference is I never had to pay to go to confession. It was available to me anytime I wanted that it was scheduled. So the whole concept of go in, disclose misdeeds, and feel better for having done them or done that process, that's not that far off to me. Having to go at it and at it and at it, and to the point that people start to make up stories or influence what's happening in their body so that they can make that needle float and just get out of there. That part, that's strange to me. That's abusive.
Jeff, how did you make your needle float?
You know, I just thought of a really good time in my life. I just kind of pretended I was happy in my mind, and it more than often worked. I made up so much stuff. My last confessional before I had just joined the Sea Org, I had to pay for it. I was on staff. I had to pay for it anyway because I was using up org resources, the auditor that was on there, and I was made to feel bad for that. But I had nothing else to say on this one question. I just started making stuff up. And I told the auditor this. I said, I'm making this up. And he goes, just tell me. And I was like, okay. And so I just started making stuff up and tell me more. Okay, well, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually my needle floated and we moved on. So,
wow.
I mean, we were in there for hours. So I'm sure he had to use the washroom. Like, we didn't leave, you know, like he just wanted this over. So.
Wow. So it was this lifetime and this lifetime answer to a sec check question. And he said, just tell me anyway.
It was last lifetime.
Oh, well, see, but that's why he said, because he doesn't, he's like, well, you might think you're making it up, but really you're not.
Right. But I mean, if someone said you're making something
as the
up,
auditor, there's actually a portion of Science for Survival that it's okay to run what the pre-clear thinks is imaginary incidents. But imagine, what an interesting thing though. You're already talking about something that's past life, right? So you're already making it up to begin with. And the auditor is supposed to differentiate between whether you're really making it up or you just think you're making it up. I can see like, oh, just tell me, just give it, just keep going. You know, it's funny. Most of the auditing that you'll hear us former Scientologists talking about is the sec checking interrogation style auditing. And the irony is that the vast majority of the bridge is not that auditing, except that's what Scientologists end up doing the most because the organization just uses this thing as a control mechanism. Like, you know, as staff members, sec checking is the vast majority of the auditing that you get.
Mm-hmm.
So you really would just try to focus on mental ways to make the needle float. You didn't have any physical tricks?
I would kind of relax my breathing, and I would think, and I would kind of like almost go into a mocked up state of reverie, like, you know, Om kind of thing. And I don't know.
Wait, yoga's bad.
Yoga's bad. No, I would just do that, and most often it did. And I would just sit there and just kind of stare at the auditor, like, this is good, and wait for him to say those magical words so I could get the heck out of there.
Did you ever clue into the fact that when you go to the examiner, all you have to do is keep talking until the examiner looks up at you, and that's like the universal symbol for your needle floated? You can stop talking whenever you want.
You know, I don't know if I never really said much at the examiner, to be honest. I would just go in there because I actually didn't even know what it was for when I first started going in. They say, okay, you go to the examiner. I'm like, okay. And I sit there and they weren't saying anything. And so I was like, oh, this is weird. And then they would just then say your needle's floating. I was actually examiner for a little while when I was being trained as a cramming officer.
Oh, wow.
And
Did you red tag a lot when you didn't know what you were supposed to do there?
I think I only red tagged, and for anyone who's watching, they essentially got sick after session, so had a bad response to auditing. I only red tagged once, I believe.
Wow, look at you. That's pretty good. That's pretty good batting average. You know, for me, coming out of the whole reanalyzing the whole auditing experience, realizing that participating in this process, that you as the recipient already know you are not allowed to get out of until you claim to have been helped. When I started to understand how like actual clinical trials work, I was like, you couldn't possibly have a system set up to be more fraudulent than telling the person you're about to do a counseling session on, you're not allowed to leave this session until you say you have been helped, is so insane.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you step back and look at Scientology as a whole, it is perfectly designed to achieve the results that it does. But the result isn't what it claims to be aiming for. So it claims to be aiming to clear the planet and make it a better place. It's perfectly designed to trap people inside, keep them inside, and make a boatload of money.
Yeah.
At every level of it.
Yeah. When Jeff, when after you get past the point where you were comfortable mentioning it to Andrea and talking about it, Andrea, did you sense that there was still parts of it that Jeff was holding on to that he was not wanting to admit were harmful, but to you it was like really obvious that it was?
I think there's always been things that I know you're taking at your own pace. And I guess one of the roles that I think I have is just to walk alongside, but not try to pull or push. Because if I try to pull or push, I can ask curious questions, but for the really deep emotional stuff, not the content stuff of Scientology, I think there's probably still some things to unlock, but they have to come out either when you're ready or when you realize that they still need to be unlocked.
Yep.
Because I don't know that everyone knows how much they're carrying inside them at all times. I think things probably catch everybody off guard of, oh, I didn't realize I was carrying that with me. I'm not quite comfortable to talk about that yet now that I know that it's there, but I might be soon. So I think there probably is still more locked away, and there has been. It's been unfolding over years.
Yeah.
It's an onion.
You two strike me as a couple that does not argue very much.
I don't think we've ever actually had an actual argument.
No.
Wow. It
No.
comes through. I can tell you that. You
She's
two seem to be
amazing.
two
Why
of the
would I
most
argue with her?
understanding people I've ever come across.
Well, I think just to put it out there too, because I get a lot of love from this channel and from the ventures on YouTube. And I'm fully aware now that people think that I'm lovely, but our relationship is also a two-way street. I'm not always lovely.
No, she is.
And I'm not always the person who's doing the supporting. I get a lot of support on the flip side as well. So I think just to put it out there that my sole role in life isn't just to hold Jeff up.
Help me.
That it does go both ways.
Jeff, I'm wondering, do you still feel like you have bad habits, or habit seems like such a casual and careless word to use, just like ways of thinking and ways of acting, ways of communicating and behaving that are just you have to sort of go like, oh shit, that's what I'm doing right now, I should stop that? Or has it been pretty easy to just kind of, well, it's never easy.
No, and right there, it's never easy. We were actually talking about this earlier. I was hardwired in Scientology, just like in the Delphi Academy, where they have knowledge reports and conditions assignments, study technology, fully in your class. That was my life during the day. Then I would go home to a Scientology parents, and then parents got divorced, but then I was still living with my dad, who was a very dedicated Scientologist. So that is hardwired into my brain all the way up until my mid-20s. So 41 now, been working on this for 10 years, and I still find myself thinking in reaction to an experience, thinking away, but then at least now I know I can recognize that as Scientology or something that doesn't quite make sense, whether it's Scientology or not specifically. But I'm able to critically think whether that's the correct reaction, and then re-examine and kind of direct my thought process another way. I think that's the easiest way for me to say it, right? But it still always happens. Like if I get sick, I think, I still think, what did I do wrong? I still think I've done something wrong, and I know it's not true. And having to do everything perfectly, just accepting, like in jobs, that I have to, no matter what, carry things out with vicious efficiency. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just want to address a comment here. What's Delphi in? So Delphi is a Scientology-based school in Oregon. It's very high level, and lots of Sea Org members come from it.
Yeah. You know, the idea, the concept, you've mentioned it a few times already, PTS. I mean, hell, it's the name of your channel, PTS for Life. I think has got to be one of the most psychically damaging concepts to force on someone, that any time anything bad happens to you, a mistake, an accident, it's because you are connected to something that is suppressing you. And then even further, and in order for you to have been able to be go the effect of that suppression, you have to have committed harmful acts yourself, or you wouldn't have gone the effect of that suppression. So literally, I mean, if you're carrying some flowers and they slip out of your hands and they break, it's not like, well, shit happens sometimes. It's, oh my God, now I've got to do a handling. Now I've got to find out what I'm not confronting and all this kind of, I mean, it's a real perfect way to fuck people up.
Yeah. And the reason my channel is called PTS for Life is because it's inescapable. You are PTS. All of you are PTS according to Scientology, because you're on planet Earth. You're going to trip. You're going to get sick. You're going to make a mistake. And there's nothing you can do about it.
That's right.
And you see that in maybe the difference in our reactions to somewhat mundane things like dropping that vase of flowers. Mine might be, oops, that was clumsy. And yours is, I'm such an idiot.
Yeah. If I make a mistake, it's instinct. I fucked up. Excuse my language.
Interesting. That's all right. So this kind of goes back to my comment that you guys seem to be a couple that gets along great and never argues. So one of the things that I have never really been able to truly let go of, because it's hardwired into me now. It actually comes from that TR9 drill, the ashtray drill. Well, the ashtray drill is TRA, and then the TR9 drill, where in order to have proper tone 40, in order to be, using proper tone 40 commands, the compliance to your commands has to be instant. And so when you're doing the ashtray drill, you're going stand up and you're making the ashtray stand up. Thank you. Sit down in that chair. Thank you. I feel like I'm missing some commands, but stand up. Thank you. Sit down in that chair. Thank you. Stand up. Thank you. And you're enforcing instant compliance. And the point is to get yourself to the point where you even expect the physical universe to instantly comply with your commands, even though you know that's not actually possible. You're building in this expectation. And then you graduate to giving those commands to an actual person of, touch that wall. Thank you. Turn around. Thank you. Walk over to that wall. Thank you. Touch that wall. I am the most impatient person I have ever met or known. I am impatient to a point that is pathological. I'm impatient to a point that it affects my life, and I can't shake that. And I'm mentioning that because you strike me as an incredibly patient person, and I just want to know how you did it.
Me or her?
Well, both of you.
You haven't hung around me enough.
There you go. Okay.
You know what? You're right. I totally understand that impatience. I think the impatience for myself, it does come like me towards me. However, I am impatient with people on the outside, but I think it's been a struggle. It's been something I actually work on every single day. I mean, just take driving, for example. If someone, let's say 8 years ago, someone didn't get off that line immediately when the light changed, I was like poised, ready to go. Like, I'm going to honk at you, buddy. But now I just kind of like, meh, whatever. He's going to go eventually. It's 2 seconds, but it has been a conscious daily effort for myself. So.
Okay. That makes me feel better. Okay.
Oh yeah. No, it's not just you. She is very patient though. I mean, we've been together for a while, so she must be.
Is there anything else that comes to mind, Jeff, as something that was just really hard to shake, whether it's just a belief or a way of behaving, anything at all?
I think, the biggest thing is my views on psychiatry and psychology. It's just, with my history, it's so difficult. And in particular, I would say psychiatric drugs. Even though I know people who have used them and used them to good result, the thought of myself going on them for depression, anxiety, which I have gone very deep into. on many times in my life, like right to the brink many times. And I could never consider actually taking them, even if I knew it was going to help me.
It's hard to get you to take a Tylenol.
Yeah. I mean, I'm better at it now, but you know, it's funny with my mom who recently passed away. She was very hardcore into that no drugs thing. And, you know, everybody at some point is going to have to realize that they might have to take something. And at the end of life, she did. And she knew that it was the right thing to do. And I mean, it was just morphine. But I tell you what, she hadn't taken a Tylenol, you know, in her entire life as a Scientologist. She never took anything.
Yeah.
And I know she suffered from migraines and so forth. So not all drugs are bad. And that's the one that has been really difficult for me to shake.
Wow. Andrew, now that you're kind of encountering other former Scientologists in the YouTube world, is there some common threat, like way of behaving or talking or acting that you're like, I don't know if you guys all realize you do this thing?
Well, I think you're all growing in awareness of how quickly you slip into Scientologies. So the acronyms, that it's just so easy when you came out of a group that was designed to separate you from other people by having its own language and terms. Because even a lot of the ways that Scientology defines words are different. Like when we're reading a Scientology text, a word in a sentence won't make sense. And it'll be like, oh, because Scientology defines it this way. So I think the ease with which you all just speak with each other in Scientology.
I truly enjoy using Scientology words with other former Scientologists. There's something that I have heard occult experts say that I still disagree with, and I'm saying it out loud just in an effort to someone can try to change my mind on it. I'm curious to know what you guys think about this. That you, as long as you still use the language, you haven't recovered. And I very much get defensive at that idea. And here's why. I don't struggle using or not using the language with people I know don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But when I'm speaking with a former Scientologist and I know they're going to know what I'm talking about, it's almost like I have this memory of when I was training at Flag, I had a lot of friends from Mexico, and because they would speak English with me, and sometimes they would start speaking English with each other, and one of them would be like, "Can you stop? Don't speak English to me. We speak Spanish." And that's sort of how I feel like why would I not use the words with someone who knows exactly what I'm talking about? I wonder what you guys think about that.
Well, from a linguist perspective, I can give you permission to do that. There's a term for it. It's called code switching.
Yeah.
And it's what allows you, if you know, say, English and Mandarin or English and Spanish, to know that if I don't have confirmation that the other person speaks the other language, I should stick to the first language. But once I have that confirmation, it's socially okay for me to switch back and forth.
Right.
And I've had an experience with someone where I'm partially bilingual in French. And they got stuck for a word in English and used a French word, and I understood it. And over the course of that conversation, the amount of French they used just kept going up and up and up and up and up. And I kept with them for a while. And then I had to tell them, you're using too much French. They're like, I'm not speaking in French. So it actually is socially acceptable from a linguistics perspective to switch into that if you consider Scientology as a language or a sub-dialect. And I think you probably could.
Yeah. So like, Jeff, do you find it triggering in any way if someone's using Scientology words with you?
No. And so two things I want to say on that, which might help back you up. One of the worst things about cults, Scientology included, is the black and white thinking. Mm-hmm. So it is either one way or not. You're with us or against us. There is no gray zone. So to say that using any language that is cult related or anything is bad and means you haven't recovered is, in my opinion, false and too sweeping, I'd say. And then secondly, I think that you can use it in any language you want as long as you own it and it doesn't own you.
I like
so
that.
If you are using that because you feel you have to or being forced to, that's different. But if you choose to speak a certain way, go for it.
I like that. I do feel like if I think I've gotten to a point now where, you know, if I'm speaking with a former Scientologist and I'm about to use the Scientology word, I will acknowledge that it's intentional. I'll go, just use the Scientology word. Like, yeah. I don't want you to think that I think that's the only way it could be described, but let's just let's save ourselves some syllables and just use the word. We both know what it means exactly, you know? I guess I do find that to be important. Let's at least acknowledge that I'm not using this word because I don't know how not to, but because it's just easier.
And we've developed some internal humor in our little family too that involves around Scientology terms. That our code switching is we don't use them when we're out with people that you hadn't felt comfortable telling that you were a Scientologist. Like we won't go, oh wait, got a body thing. Or oh, got one there.
Okay, so I just thought of a funny one. Like, you know, in Scientology, if you're not well fed and you're not well rested, or you've got something on your mind, that's called being out rudes.
Yep.
It's called being out rudiments. When you start an auditing session, there's 3 things the auditor is supposed to address in the beginning of any auditing session. And that's basically, to not use the Scientology terminology, do you have an upset? Do you have your attention on anything right now? Or is there something you've done that I don't know about that you're worried about? And so those are rudiments, but also not being well fed and well rested are other rudiments for a session. And so in shorthand in Scientology would be like, just leave me alone now. I'm really out rudes. As opposed to just leave me alone. I'm really tired and hungry, or, I'm PMSing or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
But that's an example of terminology that I would never use even casually, because it's a little too deep. It's it's too easy to say, I'm in a terrible mood.
And I don't think I've ever used that or explained that to you before. So there you go. Now I have a new one. But it is that's very specific. And there's also easier ways and more specific ways for us, or generally people to say that they're, maybe I just say I'm feeling depressed or low, or, didn't sleep well, whatever, right? Like I try and be very clear with it, how I'm feeling. And that's been important.
But sometimes, and people who know more than one language probably have this as well, where there does sometimes seem to be terms that capture things better. So the example I tend to always use is, there's a American Sign Language sign for this. And it means, in English, the translation would be gut feeling. But to me, or an intuition. But to me, this is so much more meaningful than, I have a gut feeling about that. It's more visceral. So if I'm really feeling off about something, my brain automatically goes to tell you, I have a this.
So are you fluent in sign language?
I'm probably, again, I've got about the same amount of American Sign Language as I have French. I've been fluent in both at some point in my life.
Wow. I'm still completely struck by the fact that you sound 100% American. And
is there
Jeff
something you haven't been telling me?
And Jeff says a boot.
What are you talking
about? Let's see. So have you noticed, you guys been together, did you say about 10 years now? Or
13.
13 now.
Have you noticed, I don't know, it feels like a loaded question, a change in Jeff as he's gotten more and more distance from Scientology? I mean, it feels like a loaded question, but.
I don't know if it's more and more distance from Scientology, but more and more open about Scientology experience. I've gotten to know you better.
Yeah.
That there's the feeling that, and it wasn't a barrier to the relationship, that you have stuff that you don't talk about. Like, I know there's something there. I know I can't push on it. It's not impacting our relationship. Our relationship is fine. But I feel now like there are fewer locked doors. And yeah, in general, I think having those doors be open has given you the chance to work on things like that patience with people other than people that you care immediately about. Because you're not impatient with people who are in your circle.
No, that's true.
That has that protective emotional factor, I think, for you, that I care about you, therefore I can channel the patience that I have. But things like road rage things and having some more patience with yourself. So patience with people outside your circle and patience with your inner circle of yourself has changed. I don't know if it's distance from Scientology. I think contact with the ex-Scientology community. Watching it was one thing when we were content receivers, but now that you're actually having more and more exchanges and conversations with ex-Scientologists, I think that's just helping you get some things out.
I think that with any trauma victim, if you think you're the only person and don't connect with other people, then it's really difficult to get over it, to own it, um, to become master over what has happened to you, and to redirect the energy out instead of in.
Yeah. You know, Sterling, I mean, you know, Sterling, right? You've seen a bunch of our videos together.
Yep.
You know, he's just commented on how therapeutic he has felt it has been for him since he started doing videos and saying out loud a lot of the things that he's been feeling for a long time, and having chats with, there's something about being chatting publicly about it that's even different, impacts emotionally differently than speaking privately about it. How have you felt about all this since starting your channel?
Yeah, I mean, like, so I've always been scared to talk about it because of the embarrassment and stigma. That's gone. I mean, it's for sure gone now, right? But I find that taking control of my emotions gives me that power. And I have been, instead of being a victim, I'm now becoming a cause. And in Scientology, you have the purpose to clear the planet. And that's a really big purpose. When you leave something like that, even if it's not Scientology, it's any kind of big purpose, and you go into a nothingness of no real purpose, that's depressing. And so if you can find another purpose to direct your energy to, that's as big, or even in this case, with taking Scientology down and communicating against Scientology, I mean, that's a much bigger purpose, gives you more energy, and yeah, a reason to get up in the morning and do things.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. You mentioned this purpose thing, and that's something that gets very, very much pushed very, very hard in Scientology. And it's also pushed very hard because Scientology is the greatest purpose, the highest possible purpose, that everyone else in the world just lives a sad, purposeless, drug, crime-filled existence. Yeah. And I'm wondering whether you really embrace that, the clearing the planet thing. Like, is that something you really embraced and you felt drove you, or was it just this nebulous thing that was kind of annoying?
It was pretty nebulous. It was definitely annoying. I mean, it's being pushed on every angle, right? Join the Sea Org, clear the planet. Go on course, clear the planet. Literally every promo piece is about clearing the planet, essentially. I recently did a video, kind of jokingly and very, not very mathematically, really, going over how long it would actually take to clear the planet at this rate. And I think it was 110,000 years if there was no more population growth, and they achieved their goal of, however many auditors I set out there. And that thought never crossed my mind while I was in Scientology. Like, how long would it really take? Of course, you could say, oh, well, you don't actually have to clear everybody. It's like a tipping point where we win the day, whatever. But still.
I didn't know the concept of herd immunity applied to clearing the planet.
Yeah, you only need 51%.
Yeah, so
to tip the theta and theta ratio. Don't think about it too deeply. It might not make sense.
But I guarantee, and if any Scientologists are watching this, sit down and do the math and really confront that reality of how long it would take and what kind of effort would actually be needed to do this. And then take a look and see, essentially do a doubt condition. Take a look and see what you've actually done so far. And you will see that it's pointless and you're just wasting your time.
I had a friend, actually he's a French Canadian friend. His name's Yves Martin. And he's from Canada, but he lives here in Clearwater now. He was on staff with me in Philly. And he's one of the people I was trying to sort of pull out of Scientology with me as I was on my way out. And we would have these conversations about the stats and how, nothing's happening. And he's like, even if you were to convince me that those things were true, all it would cause me to do is to rededicate myself to the cause and try harder, because clearly we're not working hard enough. And I was like, oh, there's no hope for this one.
Yeah.
Again, it's back to that. This system is so well designed to keep people in. We've talked and joked a little bit, but it's true that I picture a group of like 5 OT8s in a room. And they all know that they don't have the powers they're supposed to have, but they cannot tell each other that, or give any hint that something is amiss. And I think that's the power of the SPTV community, like the ex-Scientology community, is that you're finally able to connect together and say, we had doubts, and then our doubts grew and we got out. So I guess that's maybe the message as well to anyone who's still in, who's watching, is if you have doubts, and you may have doubts, other people have doubts too. But the system is set up so that you don't talk to each other about it.
It really is. You know, I when people say Miscavige is a genius, I go, no, he's not. Like, Scientology's not even succeeding under him. But I'll tell you who was a genius. L. Ron Hubba Hubba. There was a crazy level genius in the system he put together. That is like a perfect system of manipulation and thought stopping and mind control. I mean, we were as deeply in a cult as you can be, and I would have spit on anyone who even thought Scientology was a cult. It's how do you convince people? Say, is there anything somebody could have said to you when you were in Scientology that would have had any effect on you whatsoever? And I go, no, yeah. not at all.
My best correlation is with casinos. Because casinos have no clocks, give you extra oxygen, have no windows, draw you in with a meal that's yummy and affordable, and then get you to start playing, and then have you lose track of time and give you a purpose. And a purpose that you can get in little bits, but you can never really fully get. And you're just being effed with.
That's right. And
I will say, though, on getting people to leave, I don't think that there is anything that one can say to somebody who is in only that will cause them to leave, but you can plant seeds.
Yes, I totally agree.
And from seeds, massive oak trees can grow, and people will get out.
Yeah.
And on a personal level, like there's been talk lately about like doing more protests, and especially with the IAS event coming up and things like that. And someone had said, hold up a sign that has someone's name on it that says your family misses you and wants to see you. Not Xenu is a bunch of horse shit. But really, the outside world wants you back, and there's a space for you here.
Yeah.
And it's not bad.
It's
like,
true.
That's the thing that is pushed in Scientology. And Scientologists watching this, you know it. You are told that if you go out here, you're going to end up drugged. You'll be sad. You'll be broke. You know, all these things. It's just not true. In fact, the SPT TV community has been the most supportive I've ever been in, you know, because they know what you've been through. And so, you know, with the Aftermath Foundation, any of the SPTV communities, no one's going to say, you know, go away, don't talk to me if you want to get out. They will respond to you and they will help you.
Yeah. And also it's funny, you know, I know a lot of people who are born and raised in Scientology, and let's say they're born and raised in the Sea Org, they do have this idea that the world is a big, bad, evil place. I was and I'm curious, I'm going to tell you my experience with this, and I'm curious how it relates to yours. Because I had a whole period when I was on staff where I had a moonlight job. I had a Monday through Friday, I had a day job, Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. I knew damn well people in the real world were good people. I knew there wasn't one part of me that actually thought we were special or anything. I thought we were doing something special. I didn't necessarily think we were special or that we had a monopoly on happiness or purpose or fulfillment. I honestly just didn't worry about it too much, but I wasn't under some big illusion that the world was dangerous. It's actually interesting that Scientology, you know, L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology makes a big deal about the media being merchants of chaos, and they want to sell you a dangerous environment and sell you all this fear. And you go, wait, that's exactly what Scientology does to you. That's how the IAS raises money. They're drugging all of our kids. They're lobotomizing everyone. All these, you know, and you go, Scientology is the one that's selling a dangerous environment.
100%.
I mean, the media does too, but Scientology does as well.
So I think that anybody who is out there to get money will put out a product that will induce more money to flow into their coffers. Scientology media, it doesn't matter, right? Like it's just a marketing tactic, and it's not singled out by cults or anything. It's in business all the time.
Yeah. And, you know, even Scientology's biggest donors are people who run companies that are staffed by mostly non-Scientologists. Tom Cummins, who run, he's donated like tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars. He runs one of these energy companies that's operated with call centers that literally just hires people off the street. I mean, this guy's getting rich off of the labor of, dirty out ethics, off-purpose wogs. And he still has this idea that there's something wrong with them. And it's like, dude, that's how you're making all your money. How could they be the problem?
Well, it's like greenwashing, right? Like, you can do something that destroys the earth, but as long as you throw some money into carbon tax or something else to make up for it, you're good, right? So this Tom Cummings guy, he's throwing a bunch of money towards the IS, and so that ultimate result of curing the planet of the disease, even though he's doing something that's actually bad, is okay.
Yeah. How about we go through some of these super chats? You guys want to do that?
Sure.
Okay, we have LOPNC1. Maybe ask your daughter to do a remake of your outro video. I have asked her if she wants to do it, and she's incredibly embarrassed at the idea of even trying it. She pretends like she's kind of embarrassed that I use it as my outro, but secretly I know she loves it. Secretly, and she doesn't actually play the guitar either. Like she was just messing around with that guitar as a baby. She never actually pursued it as.
She just needs to confront it for a while.
Yeah. Tell her I'll come and give her a guitar lesson.
Stare at that guitar. Thank you. No, remember, look and look away. Look at that guitar. Thank you. Look away from that guitar. Thank you. Isn't anger reactive? Well, Samaya, that's only if you're. Well, we actually did answer this earlier, right? We actually kind of.
Well, yeah, and I would say one of the things in Scientology is you practice the tone scale. So you can causatively go through the tone scale, or you can reactively go through the tone scale.
That's right.
Right. So as long as it's you deciding to do it in order to achieve an objective, then that's not low toned.
That is right. Nancy Ives, anger is a secondary emotion. It comes from being hurt or fearful. Are Scientologists just not aware of this? Oh, that's interesting, because in Scientology, they would say they're just different tone levels, and that tone levels don't necessarily cause other tone levels, but that you can move up and down. I think it's interesting that this is simply completely different than how Scientologists think.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds like psychology to me, so Scientologists would not be aware of this.
Yeah, they would actively reject that. They go, no, it comes from an engram. It doesn't come from anything but an engram or a causative emotion to just impinge on your junior who's being mouthy.
Yeah.
Pat Short, Jeff, what is your escape story, if any? Also, were you or are you being fair gamed?
No escape story. I just left, kind of floated off. And no, I'm not being fair game that I'm aware of. No noisy investigation, but it is still fairly early in my SP career. So
that's true. Yeah, let me know if you guys notice any private investigators. Actually, I wonder, is it harder in Canada? Are the rules different about private investigators? Like in the US, you can park outside my house. If you park outside my house there all day and you're a licensed private investigator, there's nothing the police can do about it because first of all, you're licensed and you're on a public street. But Canada's a different animal than the United States. How would it be harder for Scientology to use PIs to follow and harass somebody up there?
I've never thought to look into our rules around private investigators.
No, see, now you got me paranoid. No, I actually don't know. Frankly, I don't really care. The fact is, my life's pretty boring. So if they want to go through my trash and see that I like San Pellegrino and all that stuff, go for it, man.
They can count our pizza boxes.
Yeah, like I take my dog for a walk probably 6-7 times a day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
SPTV Tattoo Warrior. One of my fellow teachers named me the irrationally helpful kid whisperer. I added it to my email. The school district wanted me to delete it, and I said no. Well, thank you for that, Barb. I wonder what you were responding to. By the way, I tried to call you yesterday and I didn't get through. So call me afterwards and let's chat. Steve C. There needs to be more of this. A rising tide, so on and so forth. Keep it up. SPTV. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just going to continue to grow. I hope exponentially. That might be a little optimistic, but how many, the more channels there are, the more Scientologists are going to stumble onto one of the channels and go, I knew that guy. I always liked that guy.
No, that's happened to me already in the past month, at least 4 times. So
That's awesome.
It's one message I can say to everybody out there who is thinking about speaking up: just do it. If we all do it at once, they can't stop us all.
That's right. That's awesome. No patience for stupid. That sounds like me. Since leaving, did or do either of you struggle with identifying, processing, and accepting different emotions? Absolutely.
That's probably the biggest issue I've had. Like, one thing I was never able to do properly, I think, as a human being, is to cry. It's been probably the most difficult thing for me to do. And to the point where sometimes I try and force myself to cry because I knew I should be crying in that incident. I know that's not an issue for you, Aaron.
As everyone knows that.
And it's great. And recently it has, obviously with some things that have happened in my life recently, it's been something I was able to do, and it's very therapeutic and important.
But you still verbally react against it. You'll say things like, I hate crying, or I don't want to be crying, or and it's obviously emotion that needs to come out of you, but you also have this logical look at it, like, I just don't like this.
Yep.
Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Is that just a Scientology thing, or was there a macho thing growing up?
No, I was never macho. I'd say it's just because, I really wanted to cry a lot as a teenager, and I was having major issues as a teenager, and I was never able to. So I guess my only way through that was to suppress.
Interesting. Ann Ortiz, just listening to this, Andrea seems calming and very understanding. Great couple. I think that is so obvious to everybody who watches you guys. Like, it really is pretty remarkable. SPTV Tattoo Warrior, Andrea, I love how you talk with Jeff and not at him. Jeff, you need to be on Letterkenny. Oh, is that a Canadian sort of sketch comedy thing? Yeah.
You should check it out. I think even you'd find it funny as American. If you like hockey, it's kind of based around a hockey small town in rural Ontario, and it's just it's pretty darn funny.
I think I've seen it. Aaron, if you never did auditing, how do you know so much? Oh no, I did plenty of auditing, both giving and receiving. I just never enjoyed it. Like, I never in my entire time in Scientology willingly went into an auditing session that I wanted to participate in. Every single auditing session was something I knew I had to do and couldn't get out of. Now, the irony is that I actually did have a lot of auditing sessions that I felt really, really, really helped me. But the fundamental structure and nature of an auditing session was always such that it didn't necessarily mean I wanted to do the next one. It was just, you know what I mean? Like, I knew I did not like talking about myself. I did not want to divulge secrets. I did not want to talk about embarrassing, personal, private things with strangers, nonetheless, much less different strangers all the time. I was like, who in their right mind would enjoy this? Like, it's one thing if you're an adult and maybe you have experience getting therapy or something, and you have stuff you want to unburden, and it's like something you want to do. But as a child, I'm sorry, what kind of child wants to go into a room with a stranger and have to be asked about things they don't want to talk about? That is fucking torture.
Yeah.
And, someone told me recently that in my auditing folder, it said I was a no gain case, no case gain, and I was like, how could you possibly make case gain when auditing was something I never willingly participated in? Like, you'd have to, anyway.
Well, your roots were out.
Yeah, my roots.
You had to be willing to be there.
Exactly, and that's the thing. As a child, your willingness to, like, they like to talk a big game about, you want to participate, but you're not allowed to say you don't want to participate. That's the thing.
No.
You're not you have to. It's like they tell you. They almost tell you exactly. They must tell you how to game the system by making it impossible to opt out of the system.
Yeah, because if you don't want to go to auditing, you are definitely committing crimes.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's no way around it. It's a catch-22. There's no way to win, period.
Yeah. Heather Andrews says another good way to bring out a Canadian accent is with the word sorry. Sorry equals American. Sorry equals American. Sorry equals Canadian. I mean, that's another one. I mean, look, she has no Canadian accent whatsoever. It is uncanny.
So if someone has put in the chat, I sound more like someone from Western Canada, and Jeff sounds someone more like from Eastern Canada. And I've spent more time on the other side.
Amazing. Okay, LOP NC1 is back. I think the Scientology drills have value. I think it's better than if you three chose a good book from the self-help area and read it and practiced together. I'm not following this.
So I think what they're trying to say is that the Scientology drills have value, and it would be better, or do we think it's better if we just chose a random self-help book? I 100% disagree. I would say the only reason that they are valuable is they get you to practice doing something, such as saying something out loud, like reading a thing from a newspaper or from Alice in Wonderland and saying it out loud. And that practice results in you becoming better at something, but not because it's a TR. You know what I mean?
Or that it's as repetitive as it is. That you could join Toastmasters to learn to be a public speaker. There are other places where LRH likely borrowed some of the basis for this tech from, that you could do it and not have it be in a brainwashing manner.
Yes, that's a great point. Allison Byrne, I love learning more about the fair game policies and how some can leave with no problem in Scientology. Is it about money, how high up in levels, secrets in terms of trying to keep some to stay? I'll tell you, my opinion on this is that fair gaming, let's talk about present day. Scientology only seems to fair game people who are speaking out publicly in the press. And I consider the press to include documentaries, television shows. I want to say YouTube now, except it's not like they're putting up websites about everyone who started a channel. It seems like YouTube is what has kind of like short-circuited their system, and they're not quite sure what to do about it yet. Because every single person who appeared in Going Clear, the 3 seasons of the Scientology and the Aftermath show, and even people who weren't in the show, but Scientology thought they were going to be in the show, all of the above people got websites. And I guess creating websites isn't the only way Scientology fair games people. Having private investigators following you around, I guess, is part of fair game. What's my answer to this? You can just leave Scientology, and if you don't speak out publicly, Scientology is gonna they'll never leave you alone as far as the mailers and the phone calls and maybe the door knocks, but they won't try to screw with your life if you don't say anything against them. If you speak out publicly, you can be fair game. I'm rambling at this point. What's the comment again? I love learning more about fair game policies and how some can leave with no problems. I don't think anybody leaves with no problems. I would say being fearful of saying anything about it is itself a problem.
Yeah.
There are people who have no problems because they keep their mouths shut and they can't speak about something that was a major part of their lives for fear of the consequences. And so they're still being controlled by the organization in the sense that, the organization's preventing them from talking about something that was a very meaningful part of their past.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the only way that you can actually truly leave Scientology, and it's something that you've said before with Hulk Hogan and whatever, if you're connected with someone who's a Scientologist, you are considered under the control of Scientology. Yeah. The only way that you can leave is by speaking out publicly and saying what you really feel. Otherwise, you're just under control.
But I think it's in terms of like at what time at this point now with the resources they have, at what point do you get to a level where they can invest in fair gaming you? It's going to be where you're starting to hit them where it hurts. So if you're in a position to attack their tax status, I don't necessarily think it's worry about people who are in a position to get Scientologists out. It's more jeopardizing their core financial stakes.
And in my opinion, as much as people ask me, are you being fair gamed, etc., I don't think it's ever really going to happen, because in my opinion, they're going to go after people who are the root cause of the issue. Yourself, Mike, Claire and Mark. You guys are the ones that are the higher level who are quote unquote causing all this. So I think they're smart enough to not just go after the little people, but to try and kind of chop it off at the root.
And people like Apostate Alex, who's going after the money side.
Yeah,
So with
especially Alex.
Scientologybusiness.com, .org.
Scientologybusiness.org, I believe, or com. Try them both.
Where it's really starting to like dive deep into something they care about, and that's their money.
Yeah. I think for sure, I think OSA has gotten to a point where they simply can't monitor everything that's coming out. There's just too many people. And I think, I mean, I've said many times, guys, one of my primary motivations is just trying to be David Miscavige's worst nightmare. And that's what, if like 30 or 40 or 50 more channels pop up, I just go, that's great, because that is David Miscavige's worst nightmare. He would love for there only to be me and Mike and Mark and Claire, and he would love it if there was just 5 or 6 people. But that's the beautiful thing. It's not 5 or 6 people. And the truth is, it never really was. But it seemed that way because there was this gatekeeping mechanism in place called production companies and, producers and all sorts of other things. That's the beauty of the YouTube platform.
Yep. You have to go directly to me. I'm my producer.
That's right.
I'm my scheduler. I do my costume, everything.
SPTV Tattoo Warrior. There it was, Andrea. Borrow, full Canadian. How do you say borrow? Say it.
Borrow?
Borrow?
Borrow. Okay, LOPNC is back with more. Can you do auditing with your guests as a video? I'm especially interested in the past live sessions. I just have absolutely no interest in doing this, and I know that I'm never going to.
Yeah.
Xenu, bless anyone who wants to give that a shot. But in all of the content that's been produced about Scientology by former Scientologists, it is amazing that almost no one has tried to recreate an auditing session. I think Karen de la Carriere has, because it seems that's like the core activity in Scientology, and it's the one thing that doesn't get recreated. Serge Delmar was an extremely accomplished auditor, and I think he's discussed wanting to do something like that. I'm just not willing to pretend being the PC.
Yeah, I think it'd be funny to watch for people who are never in, but I think it's pointless. Like, there's no purpose to it. Whereas I think it's more important to focus on helping people get out, recover, tell stories. But yeah, it would be interesting.
Yeah. Well, guys, this has been a lot of fun. I want to show everyone one more time Jeff's channel, PTS for Life. You've been doing a lot of live streams over there?
Yeah. And I try and put out at least one video a day. So
very cool.
Take a page from your book.
Nice.
Yeah. And I really enjoy the lives. I like to interact. I just crossed 2,000 subscribers as of this morning. And I look forward to if everyone can pop over there and subscribe. I got lots of fun stuff, including we're working on some more animation, animating LRH quotes and so forth, and some fun things. So I'm trying to make it a bit unique.
That's great. Well, I think you guys are awesome together. I love what you guys are doing. And any other chats that you want to do, just don't hesitate to let me know and we'll do them. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us this evening. Thank you, as always, to everyone who watches until the very end, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.